Hi, this is Gary Burghoff. The Burghoff, Boostrom, and Westfall families.
Few television shows left a mark quite like MASH. For more than a decade, audiences returned week after week to the chaos of the 4077th, where humor and heartbreak somehow existed side by side. And at the center of those early seasons was Gary Burghoff, whose soft-spoken, wide-eyed Radar O'Reilly quickly became one of the most beloved characters on the show. But as the years passed and cast reunions began bringing the surviving stars back together, one familiar face was almost always missing. While former co-stars gathered to celebrate the series that defined an era of television, Burghoff repeatedly chose to stay away. His absence did not go unnoticed. Fans who remembered Radar as the emotional heart of the early seasons began asking the same question: why would the man who helped define the spirit of MASH refuse to return when the cast reunited? Join us as we take a closer look at the reason why Gary Burghoff chose to keep his distance. The MASH scene that sparked 1,000 complaint letters and the real-life military background that shaped the show. MASH remains one of the most beloved television series of all time, a show that ran for a remarkable 11 seasons and became one of the most successful programs ever to air on CBS. Inspired by real-life experiences during the Korean War, the series blended humor and heartbreak in a way that few shows had ever managed before, drawing viewers into the chaotic world of the 4077th and building a loyal fan base that still follows the show decades later. But the legacy of MASH is not only about the stories told on screen. It is also about the people who brought those stories to life and what happened to them long after the cameras stopped rolling. Over the years, reunion specials tried to bring the cast back together to celebrate the show that defined an era. Yet one familiar face was often missing. Gary Burghoff, the actor behind Radar O'Reilly, rarely appeared when those nostalgic gatherings took place, leaving many fans wondering why one of the heart and soul figures of the series seemed to keep his distance. To understand that story, it helps to look first at the world Burghoff was once part of and the cast that helped make MASH such a lasting success. That success was driven largely by the remarkable group of actors at the center of the show, especially Alan Alda, whose portrayal of Captain Benjamin Hawkeye Pierce quickly became the emotional backbone of MASH. Alda brought a natural authenticity to the role, something that was not entirely surprising given his own connection to the military. After graduating from Fordham University, he had enlisted in the Army Reserve during the years following the Korean War, much like many other young men of his generation. During his time in service, Alda worked as a gunnery officer, an experience that gave him a deeper understanding of military life and the complicated emotions that came with it. He was not the only cast member who carried that kind of background into the show. Jamie Farr, who played the unforgettable Corporal Klinger, had also served in the military during the Korean War. Farr's time in the Army included appearing in training films, an unusual experience that gave him an early taste of performing even while he was still in uniform. That shared connection to military service helped both Alda and Farr step more naturally into the emotional world of MASH, allowing them to portray the frustrations, exhaustion, and strange humor that often defined life during wartime. Throughout the show's entire 11-season run, Alan Alda remained its steady center. He appeared in every single episode, a rare achievement for a television actor, and carried the character of Hawkeye from the first moments of the series all the way to its historic finale. While the show filmed in California, Alda made a personal decision that revealed just how important his family life remained to him. Instead of moving his family across the country, he kept them in New Jersey and spent years commuting between the two coasts. Every weekend, he would fly back home so he could be with them, choosing stability for his family over the convenience of relocating. Part of that decision came from simple uncertainty. At the beginning, Alda was not sure how long the show would last, and no one could have predicted that MASH would go on to become one of the most celebrated television series in history. When the series finally came to an end, Alda's career continued to flourish in both film and television. He appeared in a wide range of projects that allowed him to explore different types of characters, including a memorable guest role as a doctor on ER and collaborations with director Woody Allen. The MASH mistakes fans never noticed, and the time the show nearly got canceled. Even though the creators of MASH worked hard to keep the series grounded in the reality of the Korean War, the show was not always as historically accurate as it appeared on screen. Behind the scenes, practical decisions often took priority over strict authenticity, and some of those choices quietly slipped past most viewers at the time. One of the simplest examples came down to something as basic as footwear. The boots worn by the actors were supposed to resemble standard army boots, but in reality, they were not military issued at all. Real army boots turned out to be far too loud for filming, with every step creating noise that interfered with the microphones. On top of that, the boots were notoriously uncomfortable for long shooting days. So many of the actors quietly swapped them out for sneakers instead. To keep the illusion alive, scenes were carefully framed and shot in ways that hid their shoes from the camera, allowing the audience to believe the characters were still marching around camp in proper military gear. The footwear was only the beginning. Over time, a number of small details slipped into the show that did not quite belong in the Korean War era. Sharp-eyed viewers eventually noticed aluminum cans appearing in scenes, even though they were not widely used during the time period the series was set in. A pinball machine sitting inside the officers' club also raised eyebrows, since machines like that did not appear until years later. Even the candy bars seen in certain episodes carried modern UPC codes printed on the packaging. Another detail that quietly gave away the fact that those items were created decades after the war had ended. Despite these small historical slip-ups, the show eventually found an audience that embraced it completely. But that success did not come overnight. In fact, during its very first season, MASH struggled badly in the ratings. Viewers did not immediately connect with the show's unusual blend of comedy and war drama. And as the numbers continued to fall, the network began questioning whether keeping the series on the air had been the right decision at all. For a moment, cancellation seemed like a real possibility. Before pulling the plug, however, CBS decided to try one last change that would end up saving the show entirely. The network moved MASH into a new time slot, placing it on Saturday nights in a powerful lineup that included two of television's most popular programs. The new schedule placed the show right after All in the Family and just before The Mary Tyler Moore Show, two series that already commanded massive audiences. Almost immediately, the change transformed MASH's fortunes. Viewers who tuned in for the surrounding shows began sticking around, and the series suddenly started finding the audience it had been missing during its first season. From that point forward, the momentum never really stopped. What had once been a struggling show on the verge of cancellation quickly grew into one of the most beloved programs on television, securing its place in American television history and building the loyal fan base that still celebrates the series today. The hidden struggles and behind-the-scenes stories that shaped MASH. Gary Burghoff's performance as Radar O'Reilly on MASH is still widely considered one of the most memorable portrayals in the entire series, a performance that helped turn Radar into one of the emotional anchors of the show and one of the most beloved characters in television history. Yet behind that gentle, wide-eyed character was an insecurity that Burghoff worked hard to keep out of view whenever the cameras were rolling. The concern centered on his left hand. Burghoff had been born with a condition that caused several of the fingers on that hand to be noticeably shorter than usual, and he worried that showing it clearly on screen would distract viewers from the character he was trying to portray. To avoid drawing attention to it, he developed small, careful habits while filming. Radar was often seen with one hand tucked casually into his pocket, or holding something like a clipboard that conveniently covered his fingers. When scenes required both hands to be visible, Burghoff would sometimes position himself behind tables or other objects on set, so the camera would never capture a clear comparison between his hands. While Radar became one of the show's emotional centers, another character who quickly grew into a fan favorite was Corporal Maxwell Q. Klinger, played by Jamie Farr. Interestingly, Klinger was never meant to last very long on the series. The character was originally written for just a single episode, but Farr's performance was so memorable that the writers realized they had stumbled onto something special. Instead of letting him disappear after one appearance, they kept bringing him back, and before long, Klinger had become a permanent part of the camp. Klinger's role added a very different kind of energy to the show. Throughout the series, he was known for his wild schemes, often trying anything he could think of to get sent home from the Army. His most famous strategy involved dressing in elaborate women's clothing in the hope that the military would declare him unfit for duty. Alongside that running gag were countless other storylines that portrayed him as a lovable, slightly chaotic source of comic relief within the camp. Interestingly, the character could have taken a very different direction. Early ideas suggested that Klinger might try to secure a discharge by deliberately failing a psychological evaluation, but the writers eventually moved away from that concept. Instead, they leaned into the outrageous cross-dressing storyline that ultimately became one of the show's most recognizable comedic elements. Many of the show's stories were shaped by people who had actually lived through the Korean War themselves. Writers and actors often listened carefully to the experiences of veterans, doctors, and medical staff who had served in military hospitals during the conflict. These first-hand accounts were sometimes so vivid and emotionally intense that not everything could make it into the show. Some of the stories were simply too graphic or too disturbing for a network television audience, forcing the writers to leave certain details out. Even so, those real experiences helped give MASH its unusual blend of humor and emotional weight. Behind the camera, however, the relationship between the writers and the cast sometimes grew tense. In the early years of the show, the actors frequently offered suggestions and notes about the scripts, hoping to shape their characters and improve certain scenes. At first, the writers were open to the feedback, but as the notes kept coming, the process started to wear them down. Eventually, the writers decided to respond in a way that was both humorous and slightly mischievous. To make a point, they began inserting extremely inconvenient details into certain scenes. In one memorable example, the actors were required to wear heavy winter parkas and perform as though they were freezing in the middle of winter. The only problem was that the scene was being filmed in Malibu during the peak of summer heat. The uncomfortable situation got the message across quickly. After that experience, the steady stream of script notes from the cast slowed dramatically. Even with the show's growing success, not every actor felt comfortable being part of such a large ensemble. Some performers struggled with the reality of sharing the spotlight with so many other characters. McLean Stevenson, who played Lieutenant Colonel Henry Blake, eventually decided to leave the series partly because of that frustration, hoping that stepping away from the crowded cast might lead to bigger opportunities elsewhere. He chose to move on from MASH in search of a new path in his career. The MASH moments that shocked fans, from contract loopholes to a death no one saw coming. When Wayne Rogers decided it was time to leave MASH, the situation quickly turned complicated behind the scenes. Rogers had become a fan favorite as Captain Trapper John McIntyre, and the producers initially warned that walking away would place him in breach of contract. But there was one unexpected problem with that argument. Rogers had never actually signed a contract in the first place. That small oversight quietly opened the door for him to leave without legal consequences. Ironically, Rogers had not even originally set out to play Trapper. He had first auditioned for the role of Hawkeye Pierce, but after reading the character, he felt Hawkeye came across too gruff for him. Instead, he asked to try out for Trapper, and the role ended up fitting him perfectly. After leaving the series, Rogers continued working in film, but eventually expanded into producing, writing, and directing. He also developed a strong interest in finance, later launching his own stock investment company and even appearing as a guest contributor on the financial television program Cashin' In. One unusual story from the set came from the episode As Time Goes By, where the cast buried a time capsule on the ranch where the show filmed. Time capsules are usually meant to stay hidden for decades, but this one did not last very long at all. Just 2 months after the episode aired, the land was sold and construction began. During the work, a construction worker accidentally discovered the capsule. Curious about what to do with it, he contacted Alan Alda for advice. Alda told him he could simply keep it, a suggestion that reportedly left the worker unimpressed, which only makes people wonder what exactly had been buried inside. That same episode holds another surprising distinction. Despite being close to the end of the series, the famous finale of MASH was not actually the last episode filmed. Instead, the final scenes ever shot by the cast came from As Time Goes By, the episode involving the time capsule. After spending 11 years working together almost every day, the cast had already gone through the emotional experience of filming what they thought was their final goodbye. Having to return later and repeat that feeling again must have been an unusual and bittersweet moment for many of them. The decision to end the series itself came in a way that reflected the collaborative spirit of the show. Rather than a network mandate or collapsing ratings, the final call was made through a vote among the cast members. Some were ready to move on, while others would have happily continued, and the result of that vote ultimately brought the long-running series to a close. Those who wanted the story to continue later appeared in the short-lived spin-off After MASH in 1983. Over the years, MASH also welcomed a surprising number of guest stars who would later become major names. Before his rise on Three's Company, John Ritter appeared in an intense role as a soldier struggling during recovery and even taking a hostage during treatment. Lawrence Fishburne also appeared in a powerful episode that exposed a bigoted commander deliberately sending African-American soldiers into dangerous combat situations, while Patrick Swayze portrayed a terminally ill patient in one of the show's more emotional storylines. Yet perhaps the most shocking moment in the entire series came during the episode Abyssinia Henry. McLean Stevenson had already decided to leave the show, and the story initially seemed to give his character, Colonel Henry Blake, a warm and hopeful farewell. Throughout the episode, Blake says goodbye to the staff and prepares to return home to his family. But after he leaves, the mood suddenly shifts. While the surgeons are operating, radar bursts into the room with devastating news. Blake's plane had been shot down over the Sea of Japan, and he did not survive. The twist stunned viewers. Fans were furious that such a beloved character had been killed off so abruptly, and CBS received more than 1,000 complaint letters from upset viewers. Even small props from the show later became part of television history. Radar's unnamed teddy bear, which often appeared with the character, eventually made its way to the Smithsonian before being auctioned in 2005. Gary Burghoff confirmed the bear's authenticity, and after 19 bidders competed for it, the final price climbed past $14,000. The strange part is that the bear had never been planned as an important prop at all. It was simply found on the Fox Ranch set, and gradually became one of the show's most recognizable little details. Why Gary Burghoff walked away. Walter Radar O'Reilly remains one of the most beloved characters in the entire history of MASH, which is exactly why his departure in the Season 8 two-part episode, Goodbye Radar, felt so emotional for viewers who had followed the show from the very beginning. Radar had been at the heart of the series for years, so when the story signaled that he would be leaving the 4077th, fans were left wondering why someone at the center of one of the biggest television shows of the 1970s would choose to step away at all. Being part of a hit series that dominated television ratings would seem like the kind of opportunity no actor would ever want to walk away from. Yet sometimes the pressures that come with that kind of success can quietly outweigh the rewards. Even though Radar did not remain with the show all the way to its finale, the character's presence continued to shape the tone and spirit of MASH long after he was gone. It is easy to understand why the character connected so deeply with audiences. Radar was the emotional center of the show's early seasons. While much of the camp around him was filled with loud personalities, constant wisecracks, and characters who seemed to thrive on chaos, Radar offered something completely different. The other surgeons and soldiers often spent their time arguing, drinking, pulling pranks, or diving headfirst into one scheme after another, but Radar usually stood slightly apart from all of that noise. He was dependable, thoughtful, and quietly observant. The kind of character who seemed to keep the entire camp grounded even when everything around him felt out of control. That did not mean Radar lacked humor. Some of the show's most charming moments came from his subtle reactions to the madness around him. His sincerity, slightly awkward nature, and gentle innocence gave the character a warmth that balanced the sharper personalities of the other cast members. In a camp full of sarcastic surgeons and troublemaking soldiers, Radar served as the foil to nearly everyone. He was soft-spoken, loyal, and often unintentionally funny, which made his presence feel essential to the show's rhythm. Even after Burghoff left the series, many fans felt that MASH never quite felt the same without him. Burghoff's connection to the character also ran deeper than that of most cast members. He holds a unique place in the history of MASH because he was the only actor from the main ensemble who carried his role directly from Robert Altman's 1970 film into the television series. The movie had been filmed in 1969, and when the show began soon after, Burghoff returned to play Radar once again. From that point forward, he portrayed the character for nearly a decade, eventually appearing in the series until the two-part farewell episode that aired in 1979. 10 years is a long time for any actor to inhabit the same role, and that length of commitment alone likely contributed to the exhaustion that eventually built up. Although Burghoff has rarely spoken in great detail about his decision to leave, people who worked closely with him at the time have offered some insight. In an interview with the Television Academy Foundation, longtime MASH director Charles S. Dubin explained that Burghoff had begun feeling that his contributions to the show were not receiving the recognition they deserved. At the same time, the actor was also going through personal struggles at home. His marriage to Janet Gile was facing serious difficulties, and those problems were beginning to weigh heavily on him while he was still working on the series. Not long after, the couple's marriage ended in 1979. According to Dubin, those pressures sometimes surfaced while filming. During the production of Goodbye Radar, Burghoff reportedly became overwhelmed while performing one particular scene. The moment involved Radar, imagining a future with a woman he had fallen in love with, and the emotional weight of that dialogue appeared to collide with what Burghoff himself was experiencing in his own life. Dubin later recalled that the actor broke down in tears during filming and had to be walked around the Fox backlot for a while before he was able to return and finish the scene. Burghoff also spoke openly about another struggle that had begun to trouble him during those years. As Radar became more famous, people increasingly had difficulty separating the character from the actor who played him. In one interview, Burghoff reflected on how unsettling that could feel, explaining that if a person's identity becomes tied entirely to a single role, losing that role can leave them feeling as though they have lost their sense of self. He suggested that relying entirely on one professional identity could become dangerous, especially when a job eventually comes to an end. When Goodbye Radar finally aired, the episode felt like more than just a character leaving the camp. It carried the sense of a larger turning point for the series itself. By the late 1970s, several original cast members had already moved on, and the show had begun evolving into something slightly different from its earliest seasons. Radar's farewell leaned into the show's more sentimental side, yet the final moment still struck a powerful emotional chord. When Hawkeye later discovers Radar's familiar teddy bear, the object feels like a quiet reminder of everything the character had meant to the 4077th. After leaving MASH, Gary Burghoff chose to step back from television acting and spend more time focusing on family and personal interests. Although he continued to appear occasionally in films and television projects, his career gradually shifted away from the spotlight. Even so, the character he helped create remains deeply woven into the legacy of MASH, a reminder of the quiet, sincere young corporal who once kept the entire camp running while listening for helicopters long before anyone else could hear them. Why Gary Burghoff refused to attend MASH reunions. For years, whenever the cast of MASH gathered to celebrate the show that defined a generation of television, one familiar face was often missing. Gary Burghoff, the actor who brought the gentle and unforgettable Radar O'Reilly to life, slowly gained a reputation among fans as the cast member who rarely appeared when reunion specials rolled around. While many of his former co-stars returned for anniversary programs and televised retrospectives, Burghoff seemed to keep his distance, and over time that absence quietly fed the idea that he had simply refused to take part in the show's nostalgic gatherings. The reality, however, is a little more complicated than that. Although Burghoff did miss several of the larger reunions over the years, he was never completely absent from MASH retrospectives. In fact, he did return on a few occasions to reflect on the show and the role that had made him a household name. In 2016, he appeared in the television special MASH Memories and Magic, where he joined other cast members in looking back on the series and the lasting impact it had on television. Years later, he also participated in the 2024 documentary MASH, the Comedy That Changed Television, sharing new memories about his time as Radar and the experience of working on one of the most beloved shows in TV history. Even so, his absence from several earlier reunion specials had already shaped the narrative. Fans noticed when Radar was missing from those gatherings, and that absence helped cement the impression that Burghoff preferred to stay away from the spotlight surrounding the show's legacy. In truth, his distance had less to do with rejecting the series and more to do with the life he chose after leaving it. Not long after stepping away from MASH, Burghoff also stepped away from much of Hollywood itself. Rather than continuing to pursue a high-profile acting career, he shifted his focus toward a quieter life built around personal interests and family. Over the years, he devoted time to wildlife painting, spent energy on inventing and creative projects, and largely avoided the constant cycle of television appearances, conventions, and reunion events that many actors continue long after their most famous roles. That decision gradually created the impression that he had turned his back on MASH, when in reality, he had simply chosen a different path. Today, Gary Burghoff is still alive and living a largely private life. While he occasionally appears in documentaries or interviews that explore the history of the series, he has mostly remained outside the Hollywood spotlight that once surrounded him. Even so, his legacy within the show has never faded. Radar O'Reilly remains one of the most beloved characters in the entire history of MASH, and Burghoff's performance continues to stand as one of the emotional anchors of the series. His presence shaped the tone of the show's early seasons in ways that fans still recognize decades later. Before fully stepping away, Burghoff even returned briefly to the character after the original series ended. He reprised Radar in 2 episodes of the spin-off sitcom, After MASH, where the story revealed that Radar had returned home to live and work on his family farm in Iowa. Around the same time, he also filmed the pilot for a proposed series titled Walter, which would have followed Radar as he began a new chapter of life working as a police officer. The idea never moved beyond the pilot stage, and the series was never produced. Still, the character's place in television history had already been secured. MASH is filled with unforgettable personalities, but Radar remains one of the figures most closely associated with the show's most memorable years. And while Burghoff may have chosen to step away from the spotlight that followed the series, the warmth and sincerity he brought to the role continued to define what many viewers remember most about the heart of the 4077th. What MASH character is your favorite? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Also, click the next video shown on your screen. You will enjoy it.